6, the Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, excluding the banks and non-bank financial institutions covered by the Deposit Guarantee Scheme, are there any other companies that might be provided with a government guarantee while the Rt Hon John Key is Prime Minister?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, yes, Crown guarantees and indemnities arise in many forms. For example, the New Zealand Export Credit Office has, since 2001, offered a wide range of working capital and credit guarantees to a large number of New Zealand exporters. There are numerous other examples of Crown guarantees such as Housing New Zealand, Landcorp, New Zealand Railways, the Reserve Bank and others. I'll refer the member to the Fiscal Risks chapter of each Economic and Fiscal Update for more information about these guarantees.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
To the Minister, does he accept Treasury's advice found at pages 30 and 32 of their paper entitled, quote, Crown Ownership of Commercial Entities, unquote, that partly privatising the energy SOEs might create the perception of an, quote, implicit government guarantee, unquote?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, probably the single action that created the perception of implicit government guarantees was the decision by the former Labor government to offer a deposit guarantee to the banks. So it's now taken as an implicit that all our main banks have an implicit guarantee. With respect to SOEs, people will draw their own conclusions. It hasn't stopped an SOE like Air New Zealand under the mixed ownership model being a successful company.
Supplementary.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
The Minister, has he considered the possibility that an implicit government guarantee as described by Treasury might incentivise risk-taking by private investors who manage to get influence over the company, and that such risk could include asset stripping and a lack of reinvestment, the kind of practices that forced the previous government to buy back Transrail and bail out Air New Zealand after they were run into the ground by private investors?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, of course that's possible. But the government is considering whether the tests it laid out for the mixed ownership model can be met, and those tests focus on maintaining majority government ownership, providing an opportunity for New Zealanders as preferential investors to be able to invest in some sound long-term companies, thereby encouraging more savings by New Zealanders and strengthening our capital markets, which badly needed after 9 years of the previous Labor administration.
Lotu-Iiga.
Supplementary to the Minister, how have guarantees of banks and financial institutions reduced under this government?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the coverage of the deposit guarantee has narrowed considerably. The initial Crown scheme had guaranteed 73 institutions with total deposits of $125 billion, and most of those organisations paid no fees. The current scheme, which does charge commercial fees, covers just 4 institutions instead of 73 and $1.7 billion of deposits instead of $125 billion. The current scheme will cease from 31st of December this year, and it's possible that at that stage we'll be one of a very few developed countries who will have been able to get out of a government guarantee of depositors.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
So, Minister, given the national government has already spent billions bailing out South Canterbury Finance, Media Works and now possibly expenditures in relation to AMI, does he think it would be prudent to refrain from partly privatising New Zealand's energy infrastructure, eliminating the possibility that risky private sector practices could lead to future bailouts of former SOEs?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, the two issues are unrelated. I'd have to say the government has been very reluctant to enter into arrangements such as the support package for the AMI, and the opposition are giving the appearance of being against it, which is something that member should try and explain to policyholders of AMI sitting in their wrecked houses in Christchurch.
Supplementary.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
To the Minister, is it worth risking the failure of an energy company through privatisation when the advice he has received from Treasury says, and I quote, there is, well, the Minister may not like the advice, but it's there. From Treasury, and I quote, there is little evidence to suggest that privatisation would significantly improve the financial performance of SOEs.
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the member needs to make up his mind whether it's a big change or a small change if it goes into the mixed ownership model. It's either going to be hardly any benefits from it or a major disaster. Mr Speaker, the government is doing the work now to see whether the mixed ownership model will meet the tests. I must say, though, that my colleague Simon Power has done a good job of tidying up the grossly irresponsible stewardship of our SOEs by the previous government.
Question number 7, Jonathan Young.